Welcome to the Health Catalyst podcast, brought to you by YPO. Here we talk about the business of health innovation, and I sit down with industry leaders who have been in the trenches. My goal is to share the lessons and provide practical and actionable advice to help you launch, grow, and scale your business. I am your host, Rodrigo Hutt. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Pamela Worth. Pamela is the founder and CEO of Hello Health, a brain, gut, and immune support company for children with autism and autoimmunity disorders. And in today's episode, we'll be talking about personalized health and wellness, as well as some of the challenges of growing a consumer health company. Pamela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It's great to be here.
Great to have you today. I want to start by asking you about Hello Health, and in particular your origin story. I know you have a very interesting story behind it. So tell us a little bit about what is Hello Health and why did you decide to start the company?
Yeah, of course. So this came out of a personal journey, as I think most people's health companies come out of. So in our case, start out by saying the happy news now. We've got two healthy, very tall, teenage and young adult male children. But one of them at the age of 5.5 started baby talking, crawling, eyes constantly dilated, devoid of all emotion. We went to a number of different doctors and they said things like kids will be kids. He's got allergies. Don't worry about it. This too shall pass. And then the one that really got us upset and really made me start thinking I need to get deeper into this is the one that said he's now autistic and you have to take care of him the rest of his life because he's regressing so quickly. And I thought, well, this sounds really strange. And, I'm a problem solver by nature. And at the time I was running a publicly traded company with 3 different divisions, hundreds of employees. And I thought, okay, so I'm just going to kind of treat this like it's any other major business problem, right? And so started trying to get to the root of what was going on. And so finally found, and I figured because it was affecting how he was walking and talking and how he was feeling, it had to be something to do with the brain. I'm not a doctor, but I really started to dig deep into this. Couldn't find anything on the internet. And so I really sought out this neurologist who said that they take a look at the entire body. And I thought, okay, that makes a certain amount of sense. So it took us a long time to get into this doctor. The doctor finally says, let's pull some blood to work and find out what's going on inside. And I thought, gosh, I wonder why, at this point, this doctor's like the 6th or 7th doctor we've seen. I don't know why no one else had bothered to pull blood work and find out what could potentially be going on. And then a lot of people might say, well, why would you even do blood work? But I figured there had to be some reason behind all this, right? So they pulled a lot and they were looking for the presence of any infection, the presence of any genetic markers, and they were also taking a look at nutrition levels and food allergies, really taking a look at everything to see what potentially could be causing all this. And the doctor says, okay, so, come back in, we'll go over all this. Apparently he was low in vitamin D3 and B12, which is pretty common when you have a genetic marker called MTHFR, which about half the population has. And to take care of that, you have to remove folic acid out of your system, which is basically a bunch of processed food, and then take a daily methylfolate, which helps your body absorb vitamins and minerals and detox properly. So that was one thing. The other thing was he had positive titers for 2 infections. One was strep, even though he was negative for strep throat. So that was interesting. And then the other was a virus called CMV. And so she said, look, the infection has crossed the blood-brain barrier because the immune system's not working properly. It's simply too much on his system. And I said, okay. And so then she said, I'm going to teach you how to make supplements at home that will help break the blood-brain barrier. We're going to fix his gut because a lot of what goes on in the brain is actually housed and produced in the gut. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And she said, you got to give me about a year and he's going to be fine. And I said, okay, sure enough. About a year passed, he popped back and hasn't left us since. And that was well over 10 years ago. So the interesting thing in all this is if we had never taken a very hard stance into finding why potential symptoms. And so it's super, super important to test, and that can be done through saliva, stools, urine, blood, to then understand what's happening. And then making sure that you've got supplementation that can help, because our food is simply not nutritious enough, even when it's the cleanest and most organic food. And so the lab tests and the doctor appointments were so expensive at the time that we ended up having to sell a car, buy a cheaper one. And thankfully, the technology is there and it's become so much cheaper. And so I've been on this journey now, trying to ensure that people not only have access to care, but it's more cost effective. Now, a lot of people will say this still isn't cheap. You know, running a gamut of tests can still be several $100s, but it's not tens of thousands of dollars like it was. And so we're continuing to make progress. And it's my hope that by not only offering supplementation, but cost-effective lab testing, and soon layering in telehealth across all 50 states. We're starting just in the US, although we've had a lot of requests to take this international. And then the last step in all of this is really continuing to build out that connection, community, and build some of these HIPAA compliant features that are so needed. So throughout all this, it's not only been our family that's been healed, but now I'm dealing with aging parents, and dealing with that side is also incredibly difficult. And so applying a lot of the same principles as I'm dealing with parents with aging and a lot of inflammation. And frankly, they're feeling so much better now than they were several years ago as we're implementing these things. And so while our target market is mostly moms, because 99.9% of the final decision making is made by the mother in the family, we still obviously have solutions and speak to all members of the family, no matter whether it's younger, older, male, female. It's just really, really getting to the root of what's going on and helping people control that inflammation. Throughout all this too, I ended up writing a couple of books along with other doctors and families describing our journey, and also kind of helping people understand what causes inflammation. And we touched on not only what we can do through lab testing, but also what's in our environment that might be really upsetting our systems. And so then also potentially taking a look at environmental toxins, heavy metals, things that could really be upsetting the system too. So there's a lot that goes into all this when you've got chronic symptoms. And, you know, the doctors that I interview, not only through the book, but through the podcast, have confirmed that while we're currently diagnosing 1 in every 5 with an autoimmune disorder, 1 in every 25 with an autism spectrum disorder, it might not be as high because we're simply not testing why people are having these symptoms. And so part of what our, you know, education and hopefully encouragement to others is to provide empowerment to those that can really start to look into why people are having certain symptoms and see how we can undo a lot of those. And obviously with all of the work that you've done with the gut-brain axis and microbiome, you have experienced so much of this over your career. And there's, thankfully, people are finally starting to understand and grasp that they can take more control over this, but it's still a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask a question about, let me go back to your son's, experience or situation 10 years ago. So were you able to identify what was the root cause triggering the trigger? Was it a specific virus? Was it a specific, autoimmune disorder that he had or?
Yes. And so at the end of the day, the final diagnosis was an autoimmune disorder, autoimmune encephalitis or autoencephalitis. And it was, and it only had gone to the brain because the immune system wasn't working properly. And it was the viral and bacterial infection, the strep and the CMV, that had crossed over and was causing these problems. And so then by strengthening the immune system, using certain plants and herbs like oregano, olive leaf extract, frankincense, turmeric, things that really help reduce inflammation and kill those bacterial and viral loads, and fixing the gut. So then there wasn't a potential overgrowth. And so we did a hard stop on sugar. The doctor said this is like one of the most important things that we can do is to cut sugar out, because it just feeds the bad bacteria, which then goes up to the brain and causes more inflammation and affects sleep and mood, and keeps that infection in there continually alive, if you will, or going out of control.
So Hello Health, if I'm a new customer, I would go to your website. I would I could buy a test, or you can guide me to getting the right tests, because it's not only one, perhaps it's more than one.
Correct.
And then once you have your results and you can understand the different biomarkers, then you also sell different types of supplements. And then you also mentioned that now you're going to be introducing telehealth, telemedicine with coaching from specialists and doctors. Is that accurate?
Yes. And the idea is that we want to have a variety. So it could be that some people need speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, doctors, nurse practitioners, nutritionists. There's so many different potential paths. And it's really interesting. I recently got connected with a psychiatrist who's taking a whole body approach to the combination of mental health and physical health. And so there's a lot that we are able to really dig into and help people.
What would be the difference with a functional medicine clinic, for example? What would be the difference if I'm a patient or a potential patient? Why would I go to Hello Health versus going to a functional medicine clinic?
Yeah, and I absolutely believe in functional and integrative clinics. There's so many, and I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm baffled and a little overwhelmed by how many doctors there are. And many times what I've found here, and that's not always the case, it's very, very expensive to get an initial call or an initial meeting. And then many times, there's still a lot of cost around that. So if you feel like you can trust and have the capital to go and do that, absolutely. If you are unsure and kind of want to do some additional research and start to look at some things on your own without having to make a huge outlay in that initial onboarding meeting, which normally is in person. And so it could be that there's some people that feel, that they can't get to a market with this, or they don't have the hundreds of dollars for the initial call, or, the thought here is that we're really, really trying to make it accessible and cost effective.
And that sounds amazing. And how would you ensure these services remain affordable and accessible? At the end of the day, even if you have a telehealth solution, behind the digital tools, you have doctors, which are not necessarily cheap. And also, the testing, you either have your own lab or you work with other labs. And there is a similar fixed costs that you would encounter if you were a physical functional medicine clinic versus a virtual solution such as Hello Health. So how would you ensure these services remain affordable and accessible?
Yeah. So part of the plan here is to have a range and really guide practitioners to stay within a certain range. And then we're currently talking with insurance companies about taking this as insurance as well, which would be a real big win for a lot of people.
That would be great. And what's the biggest barrier to getting reimbursement, from insurance companies for, the telehealth consultations, the, lab testing? And I would imagine the supplements would never be covered, but what's your view on that? Like, why is it so hard to get reimbursement for these kind of, alternative or functional medicine solutions?
Oh gosh, I think there's a lot of potential things that could be said about our healthcare system. You know, thankfully now people are starting to ask more of these questions and ask for more of these things. And so I think as we see people requesting, requiring, wanting different types of care, I think we'll start to see a better outcome. And thankfully, a lot of organizations are now offering telehealth as part of their insurance offering as well. So there's a lot of solutions. And thankfully too, obviously, we touched on this earlier, is the technology is there and the willingness is there after COVID, that we've got some real positive things happening that I think will be a real big win for health and wellness for a long time.
Yeah, and also the science behind the microbiome. It's growing, it's emerging, yes. And there is more, clinical research and a lot of new papers being published. So I think it's definitely going in the right direction. Okay. Let me ask you a question about supplements. Mm-hmm. So you Hello Health offers supplements. Do you offer regular supplements, or do you offer personalized supplements? And what's your view of personalized supplements? There's being a question around the efficacy or evidence of efficacy if you use a personalized supplement versus a regular supplement.
Absolutely, and so pretty excited about that. We've got a personalized supplement plan in place. And so there's an organization that will take our lab testing, and then we will be offering personalized supplementation. It is a little bit more expensive, and it does require a lot of, some people are really good about maintaining their nutrition and their diet, and they're very disciplined about how they take care of themselves. And some people, are not necessarily quite there where they want to be so disciplined about all of this. And so I think having both sides, there's always a mix between dedication, cost, efficacy. And so we're doing our best to make sure that we meet people where they want to be met.
Have you seen clinical research like showcasing that personalized supplements have a better efficacy than other types of supplements, or is that still emerging, evolving?
I saw a study from Zymogen, and so they are one of the companies that does offer personalized supplementation to practitioners. And so they, for instance, have been working in clinical trials and doing studies on this. Common sense would probably tell you that, if you can have data around what your particular body is doing and how it's progressing and what you need more of, what you need less of, that certainly makes a lot of sense. There's still a long way to go. So it's definitely going to evolve.
And for Hello Health, do you envision your lab results, your lab testing informing your custom recommendations for supplements, or is it more the telehealth consultations, or is it going to be a mix of both? Any other biomarker or any other data point that you think you're going to be using to personalize and customize these supplements?
We also offer testing around hormones and aging markers, and it really depends what it is that you're trying to solve for. Ideally, this is a combination of making sure that you've got someone that you can trust talking to about your lab results. Testing is not typically just once a year, even though that's what most of us do. So if you're really, really trying to solve a problem, like what we did with our son, was we were testing every 3 months for a few years, just to make sure that we were continuing to move the needle where it needed to be moved. Because at first you think, I think I see something. Oh, I don't know if I'm seeing something or not. But if you have the data from the lab test, you're like, oh yeah, we actually did move the needle on that one, but not that one. And so that's why we're seeing mixed results. And so, it's it's good to keep track of how you're doing. And then if you're really, really trying to solve for something, just really being willing to stay on top of it and continually have a network of people around you that will help you. This health and wellness really is when you're in a real serious situation, it feels very lonely. And so making sure that, we're one part of how we can help bring a community around you to help you feel like you've got some tools or information or access or anything that helps you really dig in harder to what it is you need. That's our goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the microbiome, it's dynamic and it changes over time. So, what I've seen and what I've learned is that the recommendation is to retest every 3 to 4 months because of that, because it's dynamic. Yeah. My next question is about trust. In health and wellness, trust is essential. So how does your company, Hello Health, vet the labs and practitioners that you normally work with to ensure that your customers can trust Hello Health? So what kind of processes and how do you do that?
Yeah, so for the supplements, it's fairly straightforward. Those are tested products, and then you get the results to make sure everything is clean, right? The lab tests, it's been and the practitioners have been a much longer journey and have been at this for over 5 years, trying to make sure that we're really vetting, understanding what the results are, what the pluses or minuses are in terms of efficacy, interviewing other clients that use these solutions, offering a variety. And so some of our tests can be done at in all 50 states at different lab testing facilities like Sonora Quest, trying to remember some of the other LabCorp. And so you can go actually in person and do those, and that will provide a certain level of trust. Some people really prefer to do it in the privacy of their home. And so we've got those available to them, and we've tested and we've seen the results of their claims. And then, some of them are a combination where like a nurse practitioner or a phlebotomist will come to your house and actually draw the blood for you and then ship it for you. So then you don't feel like you have that type of liability for yourself. And so there's a number of different ways, and I think different people have different risk levels. And so we've tried to meet people where they. Yep. I apologize. My dog is deciding that now is a great time.
No worries. Let me ask you a question about your go-to-market approach. Your go-to-market approach, as far as I can tell, Hello Health markets directly to consumers, but also to practitioners. Is that accurate?
Yes, and we do have some practitioners that actually will private label our solutions for their practices.
Okay, and what are the benefits and in your opinion, what are the benefits and challenges of each? Like going directly to consumers, marketing directly to practitioners. For a company like Hello Health, what does make the most sense?
Yeah, the hard part is marketing takes money, and so if you've got a number of different markets, it just creates more avenues needing to be in the market. While we had originally come to market thinking we would just serve consumers, it's just kind of worked out that a lot of practitioners have actually asked if they could private label our solutions because they want to be offering these solutions to their patients, but they don't want to go through the effort of rebuilding everything and doing it themselves. And so they like the idea of kind of bolting on to what's already there, and but still really being authentic to themselves and just serving their patients, which is really what they want to do. They really don't want to be in the marketing business and the sales business and then the messaging business outside of themselves and keeping track of supply chains and vendors and So that's not really part of their model.
So you become a vendor, and they essentially put their name on
Yes.
the products, and
Yes.
and you still have a good margin, I would imagine, because if you don't have to spend on, you have the same COGS, but then you don't have the marketing and sales expenses. Well, you would have some of those expenses because you might not be spending marketing dollars to attract new consumers, but you would have to find those practitioners, convince them of your product. So, why would you say that marketing would be more expensive than selling directly to professionals, to doctors?
Oh, well, I don't know if it's more expensive, but it's definitely having different messaging and different outreach. When you do marketing to a consumer, marketing to a practitioner, it's going to be different messaging, different outreach, different inbound. And so it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The good news with the practitioner is that once you convince and establish a relationship with one of them, then you will have a cost to acquire that practitioner, but then the lifetime value will be potentially much, much higher.
Absolutely.
How the supplement industry, the supplement and wellness space is highly competitive. So what do you think? What do you think it's your biggest competitive advantage for Hello Health? There is a number of companies. There is a lot of supplement companies out there. There are a lot of diagnostics and labs and lab testing companies out there. How do you see what do you think of it's your biggest, competitive advantage?
There's a couple of entities out there that do combine all of this together and try and speak to functional health, root cause. What I'm finding is more and more of them are doing a membership model, which is probably better for long-term value for the organization, but I'm not sure it's better for the consumer. Maybe it is if you use them all the time. But it also feels, I don't know, it feels hard to get out of if you're in a membership. It hits that credit card bill every month or whatever. And, you just kind of look at it like, okay, is that really something I need or want? I think it's important for people to have access to things and to use them when they need them, but not force them to pay a bunch of monthly fees if it's not something that they're using because just think about it. Like, let's say you're trying to take care of yourself, your spouse, maybe a couple of kids, maybe you've got an aging parent or two. And if each person has a membership model plus lab tests, plus supplementation, plus, it's very quickly impossible to keep up with all this. It's just, it's too much. And then you feel like, okay, it's not sustainable. So I can't continue this and I'm just going to give in and I'm not going to do anything. And whereas I'd rather people kind of start where they can. And if you want more, okay, we can do a little bit more. If you need less because we're having a family moment, and we just need a break on terms of fees and what we can do or not do, then, we can do that too. There's just so much that it is going on in families, and that doesn't even touch on the mental health. And so part of what we want to do with our telehealth is offer cost-effective mental health too. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my friends and colleagues, their children and themselves are too stressed, depressed, anxious, having a hard time sleeping. It's just a lot right now. And so if we can start to help people understand that they can go on this journey a little bit at a time without having to feel like they have to go all in. And hopefully this helps them also from the trust factor of like, hey, we're able and willing to give you some resources to think about. And if you need something, ask. The amount of free phone calls that get done are quite large.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not necessarily that you find a point of differentiation based on the products, but more on the approach, on how you interact with your customers.
And, it's funny, like I originally thought I would come into this just serving those with autoimmune and autism. And then once I realized that once we kind of got started talking to that parent about that particular family member, all of a sudden they were like, oh yeah, I'm really struggling with energy. I'm really struggling with sleep. I'm really struggling with feeling sick all the time. And what do you think's happening here? And so then, kind of taking a look at it and saying, okay, well, sure, our reason why is because of, taking a look at autoimmune and autism, but there's so much else going on. Now you can't go out to market and say, I can help you with everything. But the fact of the matter is, if you've got a symptom and you're really unsure why, let's go ahead and test for it. And it may or may not be related to an autoimmune or an autism disorder, but we can certainly figure out how to help you feel better.
Yeah. Pamela, let me ask you a final question before we wrap up. And I want to ask you a question about growth strategies. What have been, the most effective marketing sales channels that you have experimented with? And what have you learned? And also maybe a comment around community building. I know that you are big into building communities, engaging communities, and providing value. So, if you think, as a CEO of the company, you have to allocate resources into, 1, 2, 3, 4 different sales or marketing channels to get your products out there and generate revenue. How do you think about that allocation based on your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. And funny enough, and so, you and I are both part of a same networking group. And so I had a fellow member reach out to me today saying, hey, I've got a pet wellness company that I'm really struggling with. Can you help me talk through and brainstorm some of this? And back to the point of having several channels, absolutely. He was focusing solely on doing paid ads as a way to generate sales, and it's the ROAS isn't there. And so again, kind of taking a look at terms of, and I had gone down that path too. I mean, it's really easy to hire an agency and say, okay, so we're going to spend this amount in money this month, and here's the expectation, and then it may or may not work out. And so having a strategy where a lot of it is making sure that you're engaging with your audience where they are. So where are they? Is it Reddit? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Is it YouTube? Where are people learning about information? And we had run a survey in the last couple of months and got feedback. And it was super interesting that most people get their health and wellness information from Reddit and Google, and a little bit of Instagram and a little bit of YouTube. And that was kind of frightening to me because, there's all kinds of information out there. And is it the right information? I don't know. They're not going to the PubMeds and the NIHs and the whatever. It's just, it's considered too esoteric, too confusing. And so, trying to make sure that we're providing real information, and, having the podcast, I think, has been great because I interview other doctors. And so having them on provides a certain level of information sharing. And most of them are very integrative, functional, root-based. Had an amazing practitioner on that had years and years of experience with the NIH and in specialties around cancer in particular. But so meeting people not only on social, but then also in some ways that provide others with expert knowledge, through like a podcast, through the book, I think has been great. Paid, it's just been okay for me. It hasn't been great. And then also having email marketing, people still like email marketing. And so I don't believe in hitting people every day. I don't even believe in hitting people every week. I think making sure that it really is valuable information. And then, I haven't loved having a private Facebook community. I still think that they probably use some of that information in ways that they probably could or shouldn't be doing. And so, part of what we're building out in this HIPAA compliant platform is making sure there is a good way for people to connect and not worry about their data being spread all over the place. So,
How are you doing that? What is a HIPAA compliant community platform?
Yeah. So imagine you want to connect with other practitioners. You want to potentially connect with people that also have a similar issue that you're trying to deal with. Maybe you create a family circle and you're keeping track of, what pharmaceuticals they're on, what supplements they're on. Is there any interactivity data? Making sure that you're keeping track of your older family members, younger family members, yourself, potentially, your partner. There's so much to keep track of and so much to not want to fill out again and again and again and guess and take back and look at old notes. And, in the case of one of my parents that's going through some treatments, I have 3 siblings that I'm constantly trying to keep aware. And what if I could just, have one place where we're all kind of talking about this outside of, a text chat, and just say, hey, here's kind of some notes. If you want to go take a look at it, if you have any questions, call me, or here's the medication they're on. Sometimes they'll be like, I read an article about blah, blah, blah. And it's not okay. Well, according to this research, it actually is okay in this particular instance. It's just, when you're dealing with chronic issues, it's just a lot of information, a lot of people.
A lot. So you're building your own HIPAA compliant group.
Yeah.
Are you using any specific technology platform or?
It's funny. I started first by going to take a look at a typical community building platform and then quickly realized none of those are HIPAA compliant. So now I'm having to go custom, and that's not exactly what I wanted to do, but that's where we are. Cause I think it has to be. I don't think you can have a health and wellness community platform without enabling it to be able to be sensitive to potential information problems.
Yeah. Makes sense. Great. Pamela, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation, and all the best to Hello Health.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Super appreciative to be here.
Thank you. Until the next time. Thank you so much. Bye.